Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We will call the March 15th meeting of the Common Council to order. I will ask our clerk to call the roll to determine a quorum.
Shapleski.
Here.
Haas.
Here.
Isaac.
Here.
May.
Here.
Probst. Here. Reinke.
Here.
Rote.
Here.
Vitale.
Here.
Weigel.
Here.
Barzak.
Here.
10 present.
We have a quorum. Our pledge this evening, we have special guests. If the young men from PAC 578 from Franklin would like to come up in front of us here. Alderman Shapleski has graciously yielded his leading the Pledge of Allegiance tonight to the Scouts. So please rise and join us along with PAC 58 from Franklin Elementary. Thank you, gentlemen. We have no items for public hearing this evening, so we will go right on to item E. I'm sorry, we have a supplemental agenda for public hearing this evening. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance to amend subsection 12.06, 12.10 sub 2, 12.30 sub 2, 12.31 sub 4, 12.32 sub 4, 12.33 sub 4, 12.34 sub 3, 12.35 sub 4, and 12.36 sub 8 of the revised municipal code relative to accessory building and accessory structure definitions and requirements.
Mr. Griepentrog.
Thank you, Mayor. As you can tell by the title, this is somewhat of a technical ordinance that we'll be going through tonight. It's largely meant to clean up the code in terms of making it more clear for staff and the public to interpret, as well as to fix some errors and make some small updates to reorganization and some technical terms in relation to accessory buildings and accessory structures for residential uses throughout the city. A brief overview, we'll be looking at some proposed updates, the definitions in relation to accessory buildings, accessory structures, through lots, and front and rear yards. Many of those definitions we've looked to include some graphics to make it more clear for both staff and the public to interpret. And then secondarily, we'll be looking to reorganize and update the requirements within the code as they relate to accessory buildings, i.e. garages, and accessory structures, i.e. storage sheds and gazebos. The first portion of the ordinance amendment that we'll be looking at relates to the definition of accessory building versus accessory structure. Currently within the code, the definition of accessory building, as you can see below, actually includes the terminology a storage shed, a gazebo, or other residential structure that is subordinate to the one or two family dwelling. There's some ambiguity or overlap there, obviously, so the definition we're seeking would be accessory building would be more specifically defined as a garage. An accessory structure would still maintain the storage shed, gazebo, and other residential structure classification. This will just help staff and the public interpret, which requirements relate to buildings and which relate to structures. Secondarily, the definition of a through lot. Currently, the definition of a through lot within the code identifies lots that have frontage on two streets, to have two front yards. There's some issue there with in relation to accessory buildings and accessory structures in relation to where they would be allowed on the yard. The definition modification that we're seeking would add the bottom section there where it says, unless where such a lot has a discernible front or rear yard as determined by the observed pattern of the block. This modification would just reflect the built environment of the city. As you can see in the example, the lots on West Revere Place clearly front West Revere Place, but based on the definition of the code, they also front West Beecher Place. Over the years, they've obviously been developed to have a front yard on Revere Place and a rear yard on Beecher Place. This modification to the code would make that more clear, and should any of these properties have any issues or questions relating to buildings or structures, this definition would make it more clear that in fact, per code, they do have a front yard as determined by their neighbors. And lastly, we would just look to modify the definition of front yard and rear yard to include a distance aspect. Currently, a front yard is defined as a yard extending the full width of the lot. We would add the depth of which is the minimum horizontal distance between the lot line and the near supporting member of the main building or house or structure, similar with the rear yard. And with that, we would add or seek to add the diagram as shown to make it more clear where we're referring to the front yard, the area in gray between the front lot line and the actual structure, similar with the rear yard, just making it more clear to everyone what those definitions mean and then what structures or buildings would be allowed in each respective yard, primarily dealing with the rear yard, obviously, when it refers to garages and structures. The second aspect would be to reorganize parts of the code so that the accessory building and accessory structures are all within one clear area. So 1210-2A would be reorganized and reworded to include all the requirements pertaining to accessory buildings for residential uses. With that, there are some modifications that have been sought and suggested by staff and ultimately the Plan Commission for recommendation for inclusion. The first of which is a height modification to allow garages to go from 15 feet up to 18 feet. With that maximum increase, there would be a requirement that there'd be a minimum 3/12 pitch on that roof structure, or on the roof structure for the accessory building. That was worked with building inspection to make that inclusion. Secondly, the alley setback to be more reflective of existing patterns of the built environment, primarily on the east side of the city where alleys are prevalent. The current setback is 5 feet on an alley. The modification being proposed would be to 3 feet of an alley, just to reflect the built environment. That obviously does have, some effect of change in terms of snow plowing and things like that. But the predominant pattern in many blocks is less than 5 feet, and so it was recommended to make it consistent with rear yard setbacks of 3 feet. Alley setbacks would be the same. And then lastly, based on the modified definition of through lot, the through lot would be allowed a accessory building or garage by code if it did in fact have a discernible rear yard. It just makes it more clear that if there's a rear yard, the through lot would be allowed to have that, whereas currently they're defined to have 2 front yards with that. And then lastly, we're just, as I mentioned, we're reorganizing the requirements into that section. So where they used to be in each individual residential district, they'd now all be within 1210A. Nothing is changing in terms of quantity. It still would allow the 1 garage as currently is within the code. Similarly, accessory structures for residential uses are being reorganized from the residential districts themselves into 1210-2B. Of note, we would clarify an existing error that has been noticed in the code in relation to height and area. Specifically, 1210-2H currently reads accessory building. That should have been accessory structure. So to make it clear what the intent of that aspect is, we would be modifying that to be correct. Then similarly, the alley setback, the through lot clarification, and the reorganization would be sought for accessory structures as well. Once again, nothing changing in relation to allowing 1 shed and 1 other structure on residential lots. And then lastly, we would remove much of that information from the existing sections in the residence districts, the numbers of which you can see on the slide. Just reorganizing it into the 1210 section, nothing changing in relation to the quantity allowance. In reorganizing it, it would also eliminate that second error where it says building rather than structure. And then lastly, of note, the accessory building section, the accessory structure section, and the residence district section will all include a coverage area chart in relation to what is allowed per lot. It's just easier for people to understand charts we found than it is to read a lengthy paragraph. It would be in all 3 sections, just of note, so that if you're looking in the accessory building section, you would see the combined area. Similarly, if you're looking in structures, or if you're looking in the main section, they all would be together. So it's, in terms of staff, that was our recommendation to make it clear so that people are looking in one section of the code don't have to reference back and forth if they don't have to. As I mentioned, we've been working with other departments, most specifically building inspection, on these updates for a few months now. This item did go to Plan Commission back in December of 2015. They recommended approval subject to working out conditions with building inspection and the attorney's office. Similarly, we're here to seek input on the proposed modifications to the code. However, we would recommend holding this item to include those comments and confirm with the city attorney that all the technicalities of the ordinance have been worked out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Griebentrog. Are there any questions from the Common Council?
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Reinke?
could you tell me under the reorganizational structure, it mentions a garage, one shed, and one other structure. Could the other structure be another shed?
Correct, it could be. So technically, you would be allowed, as it's currently written and as we're proposing to modify it, that's not changing. So technically, you would be allowed 2 sheds if that was your proposed second accessory structure. That's currently in the code. Nothing was changing on it. We were just carrying it over within this section as well.
I see, per lot.
Correct, per residential lot, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Lysick?
Mr. Griebentraub, if I heard you right on part of it, you were indicating that you were changing, basically outlawing flat roofs on garages. What does that do to existing garages that have flat roofs? Does that make them non-conforming?
I believe technically it would. Just in working with building inspection, the pitch on roofs sometimes does come into effect in terms of maintenance issues, but I do believe you would be correct that they would become non-conforming if the code were to be changed.
Well, we have houses that have attached garages where the house has a flat roof and the garage has a flat roof. What are we doing in those circumstances? I don't think you want to make the entire structure non-conforming, do you?
The intent of the modification definitely was not to increase the number of non-conforming structures. We were just directed in working with building inspection to look at, especially for new roofs, to require the pitch on them. We definitely can work with building inspection to see if that can be modified and/or look into the number of non-conforming cases that might be made out of it, but the intent was not to increase the number of non-conforming uses. That is a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the Common Council?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Vitale?
yeah, well, what about, once those flat roofs are in existence, they could be grandfathered in. I don't think really we can,
They would be grandfathered in, most definitely. The one thing that we'd have to look into is in terms of repairing them. If it's more than 50% of a non-conforming structure, we'd have to confirm whether or not that would affect it. But they could be repaired, or they could be maintained as is for sure. It would be a matter of when the repairs come up that they would need to be looked at in terms of their non-conforming structure status.
okay, thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Vitale. Any other questions from the council?
Mayor Devine,
Alderman May?
Bart, the definition of the front yard looks like it's changing. I think it used to be a set distance back from the property line, and now it's basically from the street, from the property line to the front door, for all intents and purposes. There are a couple houses Gary and I were talking about, Alderman Barzak and I were talking about it, where the individual's house is situated back at the alley, actually. These individuals have very large front yards. Would these individuals no longer be able to have a gazebo or a shed in their front yard?
Sure, as it's proposed to be modified, the code wouldn't allow it per right, but obviously there would be an option for Board of Appeals or other avenues to seek those things. In making the code, we discussed making it as clear as possible for the large predominant majority of the cases. We do acknowledge that there are, some lots that just simply don't fit in with the development pattern. And in those cases, we would, seek potentially working with the Board of Appeals. But it was our attempt at this point to make it the most useful for the most lots without making it too complicated to read. We were looking for clarity in terms of the actual code, and then there would always be an avenue to seek an appeal if that was necessary.
Okay, I have a suggestion on that in committee. I'll save the council that detail right now. Thanks.
Any other questions from the Common Council? Seeing none, are there any questions from the members of the audience?
My name is Eric Sanity. I live at 1131 South 89th Street. All this technical jargon aside, I guess my question is more from the layman's perspective. What is this meant to accomplish, or reduce any problems, eliminate any problems, simplify something, or what is this meant to discourage someone from building something? I guess I'd like to get more of a layman's point of view.
Sure. The brief answer is that it's largely meant to clarify existing interpretations within the code that we've found over the years don't actually match what's written in the code. So it is definitely not meant to discourage any sort of development and/or existing buildings, things like that. It's more meant for, we've noticed them throughout the years, and it's been recommended that we, clarify and clean up the code so that people can interpret it more directly without having to rely on staff to tell them what it says.
And a quick follow-up question. Could you just give an example of how this might, I'm just curious how this might, compared to now, what might be in the future, how this might change something or affect someone's decision, or how would this kind of more of a illustration kind of thing?
Sure. The only things that are changing would be, it would allow the 18-foot roof with that kind of pitch. So if someone wanted to build that type of roof, that would be allowed to change. Something like that, or the through lot. If you had a through lot, you would know more clearly what your rear yard and your front yard are. Currently, as I mentioned, they're both technically your front yard, and that's kind of up for interpretation as to where, buildings or structures could be placed then. So just to reiterate, it's mostly meant to clarify things. There are a few things that would be changing in terms of the alley setback, the maximum roof garage height, and the through lot, but most of it is simply a matter of reorganization.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the members of the audience on this public hearing? Okay, seeing none, we will close our public hearing this evening.
Excuse me, I don't know the quite format yet. Is it just for this, or is there going to be a participation?
Citizen participation is up next. Yep. We will now move on to item E, citizen participation. This is the opportunity for residents to address the council on matters of interest to them. We ask that you keep your comments to approximately 5 minutes, and we try to keep this portion of our agenda to about a half an hour. Is there anybody that wishes to address the council under citizen participation? We ask you to come up to the microphone and give us your name and address, and then please sign in on the clipboard either before or after your comments.
Good evening. My name is Corinne McGough. A couple of you know me here. Good evening, Alderman Sapleski and Mayor Devine. I've spoken with both of you in the recent future, or past year. I am here to discuss an alley project that was done on my alley, and I realize I have a odd alley because it kind of looks like a W almost, but and I'm gonna try to keep this down to the 5 minutes like you want. I've got a lot of notes here. I've got a lot of people I've spoken to. The total bill for my alley came to, and this is not really the whole reason I'm here, is $4,604.80, which is due tomorrow. I had some resolution proposed at me today. However, and that's going to take care of one of the problems, but there's still the other three edges of the project that I feel is incomplete. And if you look at the many pictures that I took this weekend, you'll see that where they used caps instead of the blocks themselves for building this wall. And it is not as what they told me when they originally brought this to my attention, which was back in 2012 when they proposed to redo the alley then, and I had come in and the only one that showed up from the neighborhood to the council meeting and addressed you at that point to please, if you could, postpone the alley, because the year before you did the street, and that was $3,000, and the alley was close to $3,000. And I said, I just don't have $6,000 to pay for property taxes and all that. And you did. January 30th, there was a letter the meeting was the 17th of January 2012. The letter came to my house January 30th that it was postponed. The cost at that time was $2,948.98. So that was just about 3 years ago. So the cost went up quite a bit. Still with the same proposals, modular wall, et cetera, except at that point, they were also talking about removing my fence, which runs on the north-south, and that would cost me, and I would have to have it reinstalled by somebody else. There was a wall there and has been one there for at least 40 plus 50 to 50 years. I've been there in the neighborhood, in this house for 32, in the neighborhood for 40. There was always a wall there. I never touched it. It was built out of telephone poles from who knows when, and withstood the test of time. Was falling apart, there's no doubt about it. I'm almost 60 and I'm falling apart, so trust me, I can understand what the telephone pole must have felt like. They were supposed to start this job in September, or in August, but they finally started it in September around the end of October, early November, after they were finished with the wall and stuff, said it was complete, though I don't think it looked like it was, and I didn't like it, and I still don't. The city is claiming that I own the wall, yet when they want to that they have the option to remove, I understand 1 to 3 feet of my property when and if they want to. And an example of that I have is back, I think 2 years ago. You probably know my house if you've been down National Avenue. Big giant elm tree in front, used to be. Now there's just a big trunk there. It would take about 2-3 people to wrap their arms around this puppy. It was probably about 200 years old. Well, so I called the city up to have them come out, the forestry division, to come out and have them measure to see if this was on their property or my property.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Seriously? Okay. All right, so I've addressed the city and the council on this many times. Well, that was another subject I wanted to talk about, but we won't do that here. So I have pictures if anybody would like to see them, if anybody could like to help me. Alderman Zapleski has been very helpful to me. Mayor Devine has been extremely helpful to me. Both have been courteous in returning my phone calls. I thank them for that. I'm just going to go with the people that did this job, Oakwood Company. I'd really hold off on any payments you have for them until, if people are dissatisfied with these things, that hold off on that so that they don't get away with doing sloppy work all over the place here. Until all the jobs are done right. And let's bring West Allis back to a place we are proud of. If we're going to do something to make it look good again, let's really do a good job on it and not have it half-baked. Thank you.
Corey
Oh, I'm
McGuff.
sorry. Was I supposed to give that?
Yeah.
Oh, 6923 West National Avenue. Second house from the corner.
And we'll touch base with you on recess, like
Okay,
I
thank
touched
you.
base on the phone this afternoon. Sure. Does anybody else wish to address the council under citizen participation this evening?
Hello, Council. My name is John Olesko, 1220 South 85th Street. This is regarding the Type G sloping curb that the residents would like installed on 85th Street. There were letters sent out about a week and a half ago by engineering. The numbers from the east side were pretty good. Numbers of the west side were terrible. Pretty much what I expected. The letters were, I was told by some of the neighbors who were signing the letters that they thought it was the east side only. It didn't really say in the letter one way or the other. Also in the letter, it didn't say that it was a Wisconsin Department of Transportation approved type G curb. I don't know if anybody read the letters. So there was some confusion on that. There's 2,440 feet of curb on the 85th Street between Washington and Greenfield. And they want $1 more per curb, which is, if you do both sides, it's $2,440. And out of a $2.49 million project, that's pretty well called cost neutral. If you're wondering where these curbs are located, Madison has them. It's a little bigger city than us. Greenfield has them, a little smaller city than us. So it's not some oddball type weird curb. As you well know, the curb was put in 1926. It was a mountable curb. This is probably the closest equivalent to 2016 that would match the curb they're going to remove. 90 years. Obviously, in 1926, they thought they should have had a mountable curb by us. I don't know why 2016 we shouldn't have one. So, supposedly as generations go along, you shouldn't get dumber, you should get smarter. So let's be more sociable and amiable, and 4 generations, we shouldn't be any dumber, I mean, really. I guess the bottom line is for $2,440, I've already wrote the check. I'll hand it to either the clerk or whatever. All you got to do is say, yep, and that's it. Right from me to the city or to MJ Construction. I can't see anybody complaining about it. It's not costing the taxpayers anything. It's not an ugly curb. It's a recognized curb. It's Wisconsin Department of Transportation approved curb, and this is getting ridiculous. It took a molehill and made it into a mountain out of a molehill. Let's put it back to a molehill, get rid of it, and done. And the neighbors will be happy. You've got the signatures and everything. So that's about it. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
My name is Sumas. I live at 1132 South 85th. Originally, when you were talking about the sump pumps, there was no mention of a time frame. When do we get notified that they would put these in for no cost? There wasn't anything in a letter?
The structure of this is for just to listen. We can't engage in debate
Okay.
with you because of open meetings and
Okay.
this
Well,
not
we
being on the
didn't-
agenda. We could, when we go to recess in a few minutes, we can talk to you then and,
Okay, because we didn't get any notification when this might occur
okay.
on the sump pumps. And then on the signing for this different curb, my husband had watched the board meeting, and it said the east side of the road needed to sign the papers. When I talked to Jack, he said both sides of the street needed to sign the papers. When I talked to a woman on the other side, she never got one of the letters. So we were under the assumption it was just the east side. And I just don't understand what the issue is. I know you said something about being consistent throughout the city, but there are curbs throughout the city where they're high, they're low. There's all different kinds of curbs in the city. So I don't understand what the issue is with just getting one side changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council under citizen participation this evening?
I'm Yuri Kennedy. I guess to end this portion on a more or less positive note, if I'm the last person to speak, I just wanted to announce for everyone here in attendance and watching at home. The Friends of La Folla Park have the annual Easter egg hunt and breakfast coming up on Saturday, March 26th, about 11 days from now. From 8 to 10:30 is the breakfast, followed by the egg hunt at 11 a.m., which promises to take less time than you take to brush your teeth, unfortunately, or fortunately. Just joking. And also, new this year, if you do come to the event, there is a surprise, or there will be a surprise possibly waiting in the lobby of the building. I cannot tell what that surprise is, but for those that do come, they might find themselves pleasantly surprised at what is going to be taking place in the park in the next 6 months. So without giving away the surprise, that is something to look forward to. So I invite everyone to come to the Easter egg hunt, the breakfast, and also to see the surprise. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to address the council under citizen participation this evening? Okay, we will close citizen participation. We will move on to item F. Our standing committees will be meeting during recess. The room numbers are listed on your agendas on page 1. Mayor's report this evening. I have a few things to bring up. Mr. Ed Lisinski, the Director of Building Inspection and Neighborhood Services, is going to be holding an open house / listening session on March 29th at City Hall. It will start at 5 o'clock. We hear comments, compliments, and complaints about people's interactions and dealings with the city, so we are trying to get feedback from people that have dealt with these departments over the years, and we want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, and we are going through a lot of improvement in that department, and we are looking to further that. So again, that'll be March 29th here at City Hall, Building Inspection and Neighborhood Services Department, starting at 5 o'clock. Mark your calendars for April 16th. Obviously, a lot of the snow has melted, and we've seen what's been underneath it all winter. Citywide cleanup will be going on from 9 o'clock to 11:30. It's a Saturday morning, and it will be followed by lunch at the substation. That evening is going to be the community dinner dance, which will be at the Hampton Inn. This year, it is benefiting the Disabled Veterans Chapter of West Allis. There is information on the city's website about this event. Tickets are available, tables are available, donations are more than accepted by various groups as we fundraise for the Disabled Veterans Chapter. And lastly, I just wanted to quickly announce that a couple of weeks ago, I had a resident contact me about what he had seen in some other communities about police departments putting up internet purchase stations outside the department, where there would basically be a section of the parking lot that would be under 24-hour video surveillance, and people who like to sell things on Craigslist and eBay could meet there to have a secure place to do the exchange with somebody that you don't know. So we talked with the police department, and they talked with Public Works, and those signs are now up. So if you do a lot of internet commerce and transactions and are selling things online, there is an area that is properly signed in front of the police department on 113th and Lincoln, where you can go and meet the person you are buying from or selling to and do the exchange right there in a safe location. That concludes the mayor's report this evening. Do we have any reports from the alderpersons?
Mayor Devine?
Alderman Weigel.
As we noticed tonight, the council is gnawing on all sorts of topics, accessory buildings and curbs, and one of the issues that staff has been working on is the idea of these window frame lightings in businesses, these bright LED lightings. You see them a lot. They've been, actually Journal Sentinel did a story on them last month. In an effort to get a handle on it and make a decision on whether we're going to allow them or not, or what form, and obviously the technology is evolving, Alderperson Probst and I met with members of our staff and then a business owner in the city, Tony from Exposure Enterprises. And we had a very interesting meeting, and he showed us pieces of lighting and all this stuff, but seeing them in a catalog or even holding a 2-foot piece of unlit something in your hand isn't very good at way of judging, I don't think so. What we're going to do is have a demonstration project for the next 14 days starting tomorrow at my place of business right here on Greenfield Avenue at Benno's, 7413 West Greenfield Avenue. I have 6 rectangular window frames on my business that face Greenfield Avenue, and Exposure Enterprises staff is going to come tomorrow and install 6 different versions of these lighting things. And some of them are going to be bright, and some of them are going to be green and programmable colors. And I'm inviting all the alderpersons, obviously, staff, plan commission members, members of the community, anyone, interested parties, to come by anytime in the next 2 weeks and take a look and kind of think what you like. You know, I mean, make a decision, help us make a decision on what we want to allow in the city. These lights are popping up all over the place right now, and they're currently, I guess I'd say, unregulated, but there's some concern about the image that it portrays. And I think, as a lot of people are aware, we're working very hard on our image here in the city, and we want to make sure it goes in the right direction. So, again, those lights will be going in tomorrow. They'll be up for 14 days. There'll be 6 different styles, brightnesses, colors. I invite you to reach out to the mayor or your alderperson or me or whoever, you know, and go by, take a look, probably best after dark, you get a better idea. I think we'll leave them on all night. But we're looking for people's input on it, particularly the alderpersons, the mayor, and our staff. I'd encourage plan commission members. I believe the businessman is actually going to invite members of other neighboring communities to come take a look at it, because, as you probably can guess, our neighbors are all wrestling with the same topic. So, thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Weigel. Any other reports from the alderpersons this evening?
Mayor Devine?
Alderman Probst?
I would like to thank Jefferson and Franklin Elementary Schools here in West Dallas for inviting me to read at Read Across America this past first week in March. It was a lot of fun. I love spending time with the kids. I got to read to kindergartners and first graders, and then an older class of second graders later in the afternoon. So it was a really good time, and I really appreciate being invited. And I want to send a great big thank you to our engineering department for sending a representative to our neighborhood association meeting this past week and helping our neighbors understand a little bit more about our road construction. It was really nice having them there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other alderpersons' reports?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
Last week, myself and a number of us on the council had the pleasure of attending a Rotary Club luncheon in honor of Rapinas. The Rotary Club honored Rapinas with their 4-way test award, which is basically an award they give for honesty, integrity, and ethics in business. And it certainly is a well-deserved award, and we appreciate the fact that Rapinas is in West Dallas, and certainly thank them for their service to the community, and wish them well in their business.
Thank you very much. Any other alderpersons' reports?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
I move that the approval of the minutes of the Common Council regular meeting of March 1st, 2016 be approved.
Second.
We have a motion with a second by Alderman May. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item J on your agenda, items not referred to committee. I'll ask for a motion to refer items 2 through 4 to the city attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Probst, second by Alderman Haas. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Standing committee reports, Administration and Finance Committee, Alderman
Mayor.
Vitale.
Mr. Mayor, the Administration and Finance, we met March 7 at 6 p.m. We have 3 resolutions which they were approved and recommended for approval, Mr. Mayor.
You have a motion to approve. We have a second by Alderman Lysick. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Chapletsky?
Aye.
Haas?
Aye.
Lasik?
Aye.
May?
Aye.
Probst?
Aye.
Reinke?
Aye.
Rote?
Aye.
Vitale?
Aye.
Weigel?
Aye.
Barzak?
Aye.
10 in favor, none opposed.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Vitale.
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
I move that we stand in recess until conclusion of the committee meetings.
Second.
It's a motion with a second by Alderman Barzak. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are in recess.
That's right.